Thank you, Chris. It's really nice of you to have me here and to have this fantastic Lubitsch series done at the same time my book is coming out. I'll just give a very brief introduction because I want to save time for our discussion with Nicola Lubitsch after the film, and it's wonderful to have her here. She's such a treasure. She and I we met back in 2010 when there was a Lubitsch series I curated in Locarno, Switzerland. We showed all of his films and best possible prints. So you're going to see beautiful 35mm prints of his films and a good selection of his films in both Germany and the US. Just to give you a little background on this wonderful film, this is a delightful, frothy comedy. Lubitsch made this toward the end of the silent period, 1926, and he was working for Warner Brothers. He was imported to America by Mary Pickford and made one film, and then Warner snapped him up. They were kind of a fledgling studio, supported by Rin Tin Tin, the German shepherd, supported the German director, basically. He was the moneymaker, and Lubitsch's films made money, but they weren't, big smashes, but they were tremendous critical successes. The critics and the fellow directors all thought Lubitsch was the greatest, and many of them learned from him, such as Hitchcock and Renoir and Wells and Ophuls, and you name them, just on and on. David Niven called him the master's master, which I think is a good phrase. And so Lubitsch was brought by Warner's to give prestige to the studio, and he had a lot of freedom as a result. And he made some extraordinary silent films for them. The Marriage Circle is a great, great film. I did there's a chapter from my book on Bright Light's website where they embed the Marriage Circle in it. You can watch it there, but watch it here too. And Lady Windermere's Fan is a wonderful film. The American silent period is among the hardest of his films to see, and one reason I wrote this book was a selfish reason, because I just wanted to see the films. They were inaccessible when I started. There were a few out on DVD. More and more have come out on DVD, but some have never come out in the United States. There are a few on YouTube only, and some I had to get from collectors, and I went to Europe to see the films. It was a real adventure and really fun. But so This Is Paris is one of these films that's kind of hard to see. He made these several classic films in the silent period, and you can see Marriage Circle and Lady Windermere's Fan, but So This Is Paris has always been kind of mysteriously missing in action. And the prints, I have a tape of it that's very bad condition, kind of a bad dupe, and they've restored it, so it looks very nice, and you'll see a beautifully restored print. And this was the end of his time at Warner Brothers. They were getting tired of him not making a lot of money, and they were kind of getting Philistine about his work. Why don't you make a bigger film? And he said, well, why don't you give me more money to make a bigger film? And they had gotten the benefits of the prestige, and the stock was rising and all that, and they felt they didn't need him anymore. They were very short-sighted, and they were getting interested in making sound pictures, and he became one of the best early sound filmmakers who helped create the musical. And so he did this film, and then he moved to MGM. But he once said, I've been to Paris, France, and I've been to Paris Paramount, and I prefer Paris Paramount. And this is not Paris Paramount, it's Paris Warner Brothers, but it's the same thing. It's his imaginary construction of Paris, which, part of what he brought to American cinema was a continental sensibility about sex, adult sexuality, and adult relationships between men and women, much in advance of what we have today in American films, usually as very juvenile. And I think the main interest for me in Lubitsch's films is a lot of risque sexual humor, but it's the way men and women treat each other. It's very complex in his films. The women are always fascinating characters, and quite often he has three-way relationships. He deals with unorthodox sexual relationships, and they're very complex and subtle, and a lot of his style is done in looks and gestures, and that's what fellow directors admired so much about him. And you'll see that in this film, and it's subtle, but lighthearted, but interesting commentary on relationships between the sexes. But I'll just say one more thing, that when I was in Locarno, I met Jean Duché, who's a distinguished elderly French critic, and he said he thought Lubitsch invented the musical with The Oyster Princess, which is a film made in 1919 in Germany, which is going to be part of the series. A wonderful, wild, zany film. And it was a silent film, and I said, well, what do you mean invented the musical? And there's a great sequence in there called The Foxtrot Epidemic, at a wedding where everybody breaks out into a foxtrot, and it's just a tremendous musical number within a silent film. But of course, silent films were never silent. They had an orchestra playing, or a piano, or an organ at least. And so This Is Paris, he does one of his most lavish musical numbers in a silent film, Charleston contest. It'll blow your mind. It's really a visual tour de force, spectacular. It's like an orgy on film, you know. And so he's anticipating musicals, and he invented the musical, according to Duché. And then when he made actual musicals in 1929 onward, he made some of the best, most innovative musicals. He also invented the romantic comedy along the way. Anyway, so enjoy this wonderful film, and then we'll talk with Nicola and get her reactions and answer her questions. Thank you.